sharp and soft, holy and whole, for the woman ready to burn the scripts and choose full-bodied aliveness. I'm Lucy Ports. Welcome to Blossom and Blade. Hey loves, welcome back. In this episode, I want to share with you something that is very intimate, which is an experiment that I have done with my partner a couple of times now, called 21 Days of Lovemaking. And I guess this idea for the experiment has emerged from my own 21 day self-pleasure practices that I do regularly, and the amount of insights, of transformation, of intimacy, of connection that I experience with myself inside of these practice structures and this ritual containers that I set for myself. And so I suggested this to my partner, and this was still like quite in the beginning of our relationship. And wow, I mean, both of us took the time to reflect about our individual experience every day. So we've got this diary that we wrote about it actually in both of these experiments. And just the depth of the inquiry, the challenges that we encountered in it, the new like layers of love and intimacy that we uncovered together, it was absolutely monumental for our relationship. And so in this episode, I want to share about the way in which self-pleasure and the art of intimacy with self directly translate and impacts your intimate relationships, and actually not just the relationships that are sexual, but really all of your relationships, because inside of the self-pleasure practice, you are practicing the art of life, really, the art in which you hold yourself, you come into connection, you reveal yourself, your truth, your authenticity, your deeper embodiment, your expression. And so I guess it feels important because self-pleasure as a term, I'm actually trying to find a new description that moves beyond this expression, but for now it still works. But I guess as a term, it kind of can have these like implications that it's self-indulgent, it's maybe even like feeding this idea of like, I'm an independent woman and I don't need anyone and I don't need no man, And so I guess I just want to pierce through some of these assumptions and kind of demystify like, what does it actually mean to be in this practice? If you've listened to my previous episodes, then you're probably very aware that this practice of self-pleasure goes far beyond our kind of common understanding of masturbation or some sort of goal-orientated, orgasm-orientated, performance-orientated solo sex method. But actually what it is more than anything is a relational practice. It's a practice of how we come into a relationship with ourselves and our aliveness, and as an extension of that, how we come into a relationship with life itself and all of its expressions. So how we come into a relationship with nature, with the food that we eat, with our family, with our lovers, with the people that we work with. All of these skills are transferable, and I guess this is why for me it is the absolute like most potent and rich place for me to inquire into my relationship and my availability for life. And so self-pleasure is not a substitute for intimacy with others. Like quite the opposite. I feel like the more we can practice and allow ourselves to be in deep intimacy with ourselves, the more we are creating the right environment and conditions to be in deep intimacy with others. And so this practice is such an incredible playground and teacher and experimental lab where we can practice presence, honesty, communication with our own body, where we are really inquiring into like, where are we being authentic? Where are we kind of skipping over parts of ourselves to get somewhere? You know, where is an agenda coming in where we're starting to kind of contort ourselves or like put pressure on parts of ourselves to be different? How deeply can we receive? How deeply can we stay connected to sensations in our own body? And so the way that we meet ourselves in this practice, the way that our hands meet our skin, our tissues, our belly, our breasts, our face, our genitals, our anus, like all of this is a mirror to how we are in relationship with life and with others, with the people that we are making love with. And so how I see this kind of this transferring of the skills is like when we are practicing pleasure and aliveness with ourselves, when we are in this kind of inquiry, we are in our vertical connection. And that means like we are in direct connection with the cosmos, with the earth, with our own hearts, with our own embodied experience. And we can inquire into our own divinity, into our own humanness. And yeah, that for me is the practice that anchors me the most, especially because I have found historically that I can get very lost in the horizontal, which is the kind of axis where we are coming into a relationship with one another. And I've described in the previous episode how my imprint of love, which I know is the same for many women, has been self-abandonment, has been I need to leave myself in order to be in connection with others. I need to please, I need to accommodate. And so because so many women have this imprint of self-abandonment, I truly know in my bones that having a vertical practice where it's you and God, you and the goddess, you and the sacred, you and the earth, you know, however you want to see it, you and the cosmos, like you in your deep alignment of being this conduit, right? This channel that life moves through. And anchoring into that, I see that as so fundamentally important for every woman to have this deep anchor of like belonging within oneself and knowing that I am held by these greater teachers. And so then, of course, there's the point where we're moving from this vertical alignment into all of our relationships, because we are relational beings and creatures. And in the end, if life is not about relationships and relating with others, then what is it all about? Like, surely that's the whole purpose of it all, to be in loving relationship and to constantly find harmony and understanding and boundaries and distance and closeness with each other. And so in order to not lose oneself in the horizontal, in relationships with others, which like I know so many of you know exactly what I'm talking about, a self-pleasure practice is what really, really roots you into the truth of your desires, the truth of your yes and your no, the truth of actually allowing your sensitivity, your vulnerability, and just the honest moment to moment changing of your body to be there. That is what we practice in our solo kind of vertical alignment. And so then when we move into a relationship, especially a relationship of sexual, intimate, erotic connection, romantic connection, where of course so many vulnerabilities are being touched. So we can move into those with a skill set that is very, very practical. This is your ability to be somatically present within yourself. This is also called having interoceptive awareness. This means you are able to feel, to be aware of, to name the sensations which are happening inside of your own body moment to moment. This is the opposite of disassociating. You are developing the skill to become acutely aware of what is moving and changing and shifting inside of you at all times. And this also means being intimately connected to your intuition, to your gut instinct, your inner knowing, that knows exactly when something is off, when something doesn't feel right, when the energy shifts ever so slightly. You feel it in your body. And so with this awareness, you are then able to bring that into partnership. Let's just say, for example, you can feel your partner is losing presence. Or maybe your partner is, totally with like eyes on the prize and going for a certain goal. Or you're needing more slowness. You're needing a different kind of heart connection. You're needing a different kind of touch. Actually, maybe you're needing to not be sexually intimate in this moment at all, and you just need a hug. Maybe you need to cry. And so your ability to track your interior landscape at all times is the most foundational skill that you can bring as a gift into your intimate relationships. And of course, with that, with the ability to track yourself, you're also able to then track when there is an expansion, there is a yes in your body, there's an opening, like a more. And you can also track very precisely when there's a contraction, when it's like, something's changed, something's different now. I need to pause, I need to stop. And it's the lack of embodiment, the lack of being able to track one's own interior landscape that leads to boundary crossings, that leads to violations. They can be very subtle or they can be more impactful. So only when we are in this intimate connection, communication, we are able to bring this into our partnership and into the moment of intimacy, right? And so with that, also, when we are this deeply connected to our somatic landscape and experience, it also becomes very, very difficult to perform in sex. Because the deeper your embodiment reaches inside of yourself, like the less able you are to bullshit yourself, because it just hurts too much. Like your body actually hurts when you do that. And there's such a strong no when you connect to that. So this idea of like faking pleasure or like going along with something that you don't really want, it just becomes more and more impossible. And so, having this solo practice to actually become very curious about the kind of touch that you want, playing with different speed and pressure, playing with different qualities of energy that you're inviting in, bringing in your like vast creativity, which you've got access to, as opposed to getting lazy and just, pressing certain buttons in a certain way because it works, going for the quick release orgasm, or just rubbing one out because it's like, oh yeah, we're just going for a quick tension release, as opposed to, what if I make love to my own body? And I guess this is like where the ripple effect then happens into partnership when you stop commodifying your own body. And commodification is I come to you because I want something, I take it, I leave. Right? Like, how many women have got this pattern in terms of like how they relate to their own sexuality solo? Imagine if that was how our like partners or lovers would relate to us. This doesn't feel good, right? Being able to recognize one's own patterns of extraction, of pressure, of wanting a certain thing to happen in a certain time frame, of being lazy, of not being creative, of just like running the same old script that maybe I've run for years. That's not lovemaking. That's just milking one's body for like a certain experience. And so once we bring awareness to the moments in which we fall into that inner self-pleasure practice, we become acutely aware of when this happens in lovemaking. And then we can pause and ask, like, do I really want this? Do I maybe want to try a different way? And so, yeah, this is where I want to start sharing about this experiment with my partner in a bit more detail, because this was our intention, you know? We wanted to see what else is there? How many different ways of meeting in intimacy, of meeting in connection, and of making love can we actually explore? Because despite the fact that we hadn't been dating for that long when we did this first experiment, there were certain patterns and habits that just became established relatively quickly. And so we noticed that and we were like, okay, let's play, let's experiment. And the way that we did that was that we committed to 21 days and we committed to meeting in intimacy every day for like a minimum of half an hour. And to meet with touch, with our bodies, with breath, with sound, with movement, and just to see what happens. And of course, I'd done that a bunch of times with myself, and I was very used to meeting myself in moments where I didn't feel juicy, I didn't feel open, I didn't feel like my body was like ready for any type of pleasure, any type of intimacy, when actually there were parts of me where I was like, I just wanna just leave me alone, you know? And I found ways to hold myself and to meet myself in these moments in my solo practice. But then bringing that into the horizontal, into my relationship with my love, was a whole different ball game. Wow. And I guess what surprised me the most in this 21-day experiment was that the challenges weren't really connected to sexuality, but the challenges were connected to the level of intimacy and vulnerability that we were willing to meet inside of. So maybe we had like a squabble, you know, like a little argument in the day, and sometimes even a big argument. Like feeling my system in defense towards him, feeling parts of me having closed down, and then moving into this practice and not skipping over these parts, not kind of like trying to push through and move into something with him, you know, just because of the practice, but actually honoring these parts inside of our meeting and just feeling the terror inside of me to actually let him close to me again and to let myself be seen by him in all of these emotions that I was trying to hide. And I'm a very emotionally open and expressive person, you know? It's not a challenge of mine to show the range of my emotions. But there was something in the level of intimacy of actually not just me showing my emotions, but keeping him at a distance, but me showing myself and letting him into connection again at the speed that I felt ready to. Wow. I mean, there were there were tears, there was anger, there was me just, like grabbing him and crying into him, and we were wrestling at times. We were play fighting, we were, giving each other intimate body work that was connected with just like big releases and um, you know, penetrating each other in the various different ways and stroking and holding each other and kissing and licking and biting and yeah, the the full range of coming into connection. And it was interesting for me to feel like, okay, sometimes I need something that is so slow and so soft and so sensitive. And sometimes I just need to be grabbed and thrown around and spanked, and it might change, within a few minutes. Like the access point to the connection, it constantly changes. And this was one of the most amazing things, it just required from both of us to stay in such exquisite presence with each other, because we weren't just, you know, going with the flow of like, oh, now we're feeling turned on, so now we're falling into lovemaking. Like, yeah, sometimes that happened, and that was wonderful, when our joint arousal kind of aligned with our practice. But it wasn't always that way. Sometimes it was like, he's feeling open, I'm feeling closed, or the other way around, or we're both feeling closed, and we're just kind of fumbling in the dark, trying to find this access point, like what is the window to connection here? And it was absolutely magnificent to feel this kind of dance that we allowed ourselves to get into, where again and again and again we had to drop the agenda that anything specific needed to happen. It's like, this needs to be this kind of like juicy, erotic, aroused lovemaking. Like, no, like maybe this is just me holding your thighs and you are crying or shaking, and from there we are curious about the next step. Maybe one moment we're kissing and the other moment we're rolling around on the floor. It was just this constant like creative inquiry and emptying our minds and freeing ourselves of any kind of storylines of like, this is what this is meant to look like or sound like, and just being in the total emergence of erotic aliveness between us. And this led to some of the most cosmic and soul-shaking, ecstatic lovemaking sessions that we shared. And it also led to some of the most challenging moments of both of us just being like, how do we meet each other now? But in those moments, not abandoning each other, not making each other wrong because one person maybe desires one thing and the other needs something else, not trying to kind of put our agenda or, this is the way that it's meant to be on the other, but constantly allowing all parts of both of our experience to be present and alchemizing them, just like diving right into them, feeling them fully and just seeing like what's on the other side. So not every session felt super magical or super erotic. You know, some sessions felt maybe a bit meh, a bit mundane, a bit, yeah, you know, we tried. We tried to meet each other. But the point wasn't to create this, you know, these perfect conditions for sex. It really was about creating a shared field of curiosity, of honesty, and of this dance of lovemaking through shared intimacy. I invited him into this practice because I kind of already had developed the many different ways in which meeting is possible. And so we had some shared language, or we developed some shared language and a container and a field of permission for all of the things that I feel like often between couples remain unspoken, you know, the ways in which we're going we're going in this direction, and all of a sudden something changes and I want to go elsewhere. The way in which like a vulnerability arises, which actually can't be integrated into sex in this moment. Like, how can we meet it? And what I felt again and again, and this is what I also shared about in the previous episode, is that within a practice and a ritual container, every blockage, every limitation, so to say, every contraction becomes a portal for deeper connection. So actually, the moments that felt the least sexy became opportunities for meeting each other in our deepest truth, with our hearts the most revealed, because we are dancing in the unknown together. Both of us are feeling a bit clunky. We don't really know what the next step is because we've let go of the script. The script of, you know, kissing and then doing a bit of rubbing and maybe a bit of oral sex and then going into penetration, right? Like the script. We're letting that go. And then what? We've got this whole blank canvas to play with. And so solo erotic practice, joint erotic practice is really a practice of deep intimacy with life. As women, I feel like it's absolutely foundational that we have this solo practice that we can root into for ourselves in order to create this level of knowing. And also because in relationship with men specifically, and in sexuality with men, we are really the ones who initiate through our embodied guidance, through the oracle, because we are so deeply connected to our intuition, to a level of sensitivity, to a level of like attunement to the subtleties that men don't have as easy an access to. And so this is kind of the embodiment of the archetype of the priestess, of the one who has this deep connection to the sacred through her own flesh, blood, and bones, through her womb, through her heart, and to offer that as a gift into the relationship, to offer that as a place where a deeper level of love can be embodied through sexuality, through intimate connections, through bodies coming together. And so the things that become possible in sexual relationships with others when we truly know the undulations and vibrations and the currents and the changes that our erotic energy, the way that it dances through us, we can open up totally new dimensions of lovemaking. this is kind of where we get to when we really devote ourselves to the practice. The first step is coming out of the old limiting behaviors and patterns and the kind of, straight jacket of some of the conditioning which we have embodied. The first step is to begin bringing awareness to that and loosening those shapes. And then once we have access to more range in our bodies, we can really begin to play, like really begin to make love in the deepest sense of the meaning. And so I want to share about one experience specifically that I had with my partner, which still, like, it's been quite a while now. I think it's already been a year that we've had that. But the experience that we shared of really falling into each other's bodies and a feeling of deep union and oneness and connection to this whole ecosystem of light, of love, of magic carrying us, through our lovemaking. How sacred that is to have experiences like that just feel like a deep remembrance of what love is all about, where we travel so far beyond just being in this thing of like getting each other's needs met and, like you like this, so I rub like this, and you like this, so I suck like this, and, just kind of masturbating each other in sex, which is something that I've definitely experienced in the past. And it's like, it's fine, like maybe you even have an orgasm and stuff, but it's a bit like, but that's not it. Like, I want ecstatic, soul-shaking, transformational lovemaking that leaves me feeling changed, that leaves me feeling expanded. And this is what we can access by having this regular practice. And alongside that, you really learn to not take yourself so goddamn seriously, because that's also a thing that can happen in intimacy because it's so vulnerable, right? And opening ourselves to like learning and exploring something new is so vulnerable. And you just get to be playful again. There was a time in your life where you explored your body in a way that was very curious. And it's this quality of erotic innocence, of like, it just feels good to be in a body. It feels good to like explore and touch and play and move and sound and roll around and, just like being a little creature again, being a little child again. And again, just like bringing more of this lightness, this playfulness, this like, we don't have to achieve anything here. We don't actually have to get anywhere. We just get to, fuck around and find out, quite literally. Felt so like rejuvenating for our relationship and just brought in just so much joy, so much joy and so many like random experiences. I remember us just like running naked around the pool in the Canary Islands when we were on holiday. So like standing on top of a volcano and having a sex magic ritual. And there's these kind of like these moments, these snapshots where it's like, we couldn't have planned this, we couldn't have planned this if we just did what we always do, but we have opened ourselves up to the mystery, to the vulnerability of not knowing, to like dancing in the dark together. And here we are. And it's absolutely incredible. And sometimes it's clunky and it's awkward and it's weird. And isn't that the most alive thing that we can do together? Being in this moment to moment exploration of just like following a pulse of like, I don't know what's going to be happening next, but I'm in this with you. And I will be in this with you. That is the beauty, because this is the ritual container that holds it. And so self-pleasure is really it's the practice of lovemaking. And I guess that's the main thing that I, want you to take away from listening to this episode. Like, this practice doesn't stop with you being in your solo exploration. This is really just the beginning and the foundation for how you live and relate and connect and make love with others and with life. And learning to stay with yourself, learning to not abandon yourself is really the beginning of meeting each other more deeply. And what this also helps us with is coming out of this kind of shape of entitlement with an intimacy. So I want to invite you into a little inquiry. When you said that having sex with someone was bad, maybe you have said that about someone. What was it really that was bad about it? Did you ask for what you want? Did you say when you didn't like something? Were you able to fully feel and receive the touch that you were being given? Were you even a full yes to being with this person, in your heart, in your body, in your mind? And so it's really easy, I feel like, again, in the way that like the female psyche has been shaped to kind of collapse into this like shape of having been done to, which of course is also the reality of some of the historical baggage that we carry and the current baggage as well. So I don't want to dismiss that. But because of that, our psyche has been shaped in a way that it's really easy to just kind of go into this collapse and go into this, well, he's just going to do things to me and I better like them. And if I don't like them, well, then that's just the way it is. But afterwards, I'm probably going to be feeling like shit, right? And this is quite an extreme way of saying it, but I'm pretty sure that every single woman has had experiences like that, or like more subtle versions of this. And so when you know how to open up your own body, how to feel yourself deeply, when you know exactly what qualities of touch like support you in feeling yourself more deeply, what brings you pleasure, what brings aliveness to your body. When you know that, you stop expecting the other person to read you and maybe know you better than you know yourself. You can't expect a level of attunement and sensitivity from another person that you don't have with your own body. You are the guide, you are that knows. Even the most sensitive lover will never know and feel your body as deeply as you do from the inside. And so this is really an invitation to stop outsourcing your pleasure, to take responsibility for getting to know this beautiful body church that you live within, this companion, this home, this being that you travel with until you take your last breath. It is your responsibility to become as intimate with this as you possibly can. And then from that place, you can be the one who guides into and initiates deeper intimacy with your partner. And your intimacy becomes more honest, not necessarily more polished or more sexy or more, worthy of that idealized image, but it becomes more real. And as long as you abandon yourself in your own body, it will be very hard to not abandon yourself in intimacy, like tracking the moments that you leave yourself. This is your superpower. Bring yourself back into connection. And so all of this, is not about becoming perfect at sex. It is about becoming more honest, more real, more vulnerable, more raw. Just more truthful in how life moves you moment to moment and the beautiful doorways that opens with yourself and in intimacy with others. And so if this resonates with you and you want to explore this work more deeply, you can check out my offering Blossom and Blade in the show notes. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you and what this conversation moved in you. Feel free to leave a comment or drop me a message, and just sending you loads of love. Until next time, bye bye.